Ruzhinji rwaramba. Zimbabwe yaramba. Zimbabwe yaramba. Zimbabwe yaramba. Police the police, guard the guard, chair the chair, chef the chef.
Good evening and welcome to Combating Corruption, your weekly current affairs program that focuses on all things relating to corruption. We do implore you to be part of the conversation. Get a hold of us on our social media platforms at ZBC News Online. And today, unpacking issues around corruption in the local authorities and also concerns around compliancy and system reviews. I'm currently joined in studio from the Urban Council Association of Zimbabwe. It's a President, Mr. Abel Matsika. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for that.
And also joining us from the Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission, Commissioner Mlobane, who's in charge of compliance and, who's more in line with the compliance and systems reviews, and will be able to give us a bit of an appreciation of how the Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission's engagements have been so far. Commissioner Mlobane, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Right. I guess my first question will be targeted towards President Matsika for the Urban Council Association of Zimbabwe. When it comes to being able to appreciate not only the history, relevance and significance towards urban development in Zimbabwe, give us an appreciation of the Urban Council of Zimbabwe.
Yeah, Urban Council Association of Zimbabwe is made up of local authorities within the urban setup. We are 32 local authorities in UCAS. UCAS dates back long back. And we are just continuing with the mandate that it has had for a long time.
Right. Now look at the mandate that it has had for a long time. Internally, administratively, I know that from I think about 1998, you went through a few administrative changes, but more importantly, its constitution only having been re-looked at in 2020 as a result of the decentralization component brought in at a national level. Tell us a bit about the association's own assurance of meeting compliance with the times as it progresses, looking very closely at its mandate.
Compliance issues, we as UCAS, we focus much on making sure that all the statutories that we are supposed to adhere to, be the Urban Councils Act, be the Constitution of Zimbabwe, we really comply. And ZAC is coming in now, checking on the systems that are there.
Right, talking about ZAC coming in right now, Commissioner Mlobane, tell us a bit about how exactly you have gone so far to engage urban and the local councils.
Thank you very much. Our engagement with local authorities started in 2020 when we sent out a questionnaire, a survey, when we conducted a survey among the 92 local authorities to establish whether or not they had systems that would prevent corruption. There were specific questions that we asked them to find out in terms of corporate governance, to establish whether corporate governance was strong enough to prevent certain corrupt practices. And the result of the questionnaire was that we established that there were a number of policies that were missing in their toolkit, and we therefore developed a prevention of corruption toolkit, which we then used to as a measure to find out how compliant they were towards preventing corruption. And then in 2021, last year, we engaged all the 92 local authorities. We met with the internal auditors. We met with the internal auditors from rural district councils, and then we met afterwards. We met with the internal auditors from the urban councils. It was our engagement with the internal auditors that we established a number of issues. First, we established that internal auditors were being victimized in local authorities. Some of them were not even given the tools of trade. They were not treated as well because of the fact that in most cases their reports were damning towards management, and therefore we felt that it was opportune time to then introduce an alternative, which would be the integrity committees.
I do want to pick up on a point, Mr. Matsika, on Commissioner Mlobane's sentiments around internal auditors being victimized. Now, entities such as urban councils, local authorities rather, do have their own internal mechanisms to operate by. Now, when an internal audit is taking place and you find that you're victimized and intimidated, to the best of your understanding, what did contribute rather towards such circumstances prevailing?
It's unfortunate that I'm hearing that for the first time. We've been interacting with the auditors, our internal auditors, for quite some time, and we never had such an issue being raised where they are victimized. We've been working with them very well, and they are the contact persons even when external auditors come. So it's the first time I'm hearing that they are being victimized.
Isn't that where the cause of concern comes in, Commissioner Mlobane, that to some degree this disconnect in terms of the Anti-Corruption Commission's engagement of irregular practices, and then also disinformation being highlighted around their inability to administer those practices? How then would you respond to Mr. Matsika's sentiment?
Yeah, the internal auditors, yes, we engaged them and they informed us because we wanted to know where were the internal auditors when the Auditor-General's recommendations were not being implemented.
Right.
And the responses we got from the internal auditors, not just from urban councils only, no, we actually met internal auditors from 144 public institutions, and the sentiments were the same right across, that they were being victimized, particularly because most of them are whistleblowers, because or even the Auditor-General relies to some extent on the reports of the internal auditors. So they indicated victimization, and victimization, by the way, isn't just direct. In some cases, is that an internal auditor, particularly one urban council, internal auditor informed us that he was the only one who didn't even get the tools of trade, didn't even get when others got laptops, and also when they got iPads, he didn't get any because of being an internal auditor. And in some cases, some of them said even for them to attend the workshop that we called them, it was really a struggle,
right,
because of their position.
Right. I'm so glad that you do raise up those pertinent points there, Commissioner, but I do want to bring in Mr. Matsika. When one looks at the current state of urban councils within Zimbabwe, we cannot consider that corruption does not take place. It clearly does. To the best of your knowledge, what has contributed towards the sporadic increase in corrupt activity with local councils?
Corruption is existent in local authorities, like we have noticed through the arrests and cases that are under investigations. And if we look at it, there could be quite a number of issues that were even identified by ZAC when they were checking on the systems. And one of them is really lack of systems or laxity.
But Mr. Matsika, I'd like to know from your part, from your internal structures within the Urban Council Association of Zimbabwe, what have been your findings that contribute towards the increase in corrupt activity taking place in the councils? I acknowledge that the Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission will give us their report in due course, but just from your own internal measures, what have you discovered?
It's the systems that are not tight. We just need to tighten up the systems.
Right.
Yes.
And I really appreciate you being able to be honest enough to share that, because that gets back to where Commissioner Mlobane then comes in. There is a difficulty in being able to address the systems that are currently in place. It does seem as though that either the systems are rather redundant or that they need to be revamped. And I'd love to hear, in terms of your investigations, Commissioner, how you feel best the issue of failure to adopt systems within local councils can better be addressed.
Yes. The areas that were found very prone to corruption or most vulnerable to corruption are the areas of procurement, recruitment, and lack of implementation of the Auditor-General's recommendations. In terms of procurement, at the time when we did the compliance checks last year, we established that a number of them did not even have procurement management units as required in the Public Procurement and Disposal of Public Assets Act. And so through our recommendations, we recommended that all local authorities ensure that they have PMUs, that's procurement management units, and that should be free from interference by other departments. What was happening is that in other institutions, there was interference from other departments interfering with the operations of the PMUs, and that compromised the procurement systems.
I see, Mr. Matsika, you're nodding your head there. What would your sentiments be towards us contributing towards that particular challenge?
Yeah, it has to do with lack of training lack of training in terms of procurement procedures, especially on the area of procurement.
But Mr. Matsika, then we get back to another concern that comes up, is the competency of those who then come in to be able to manage a local authority's resources. I mean, like, if you say that there's lack of training, then how do they find themselves within the appointment of such positions?
Yeah, you see, when people get into employment, they have qualifications, obviously, but they have to...
If I could just hold you on that particular note, we'll get that response as soon as we come back from a break. Thank you so much. We'll take a short break and be right back with more.
Police the police, guard the guard, chair the chair, chef the chef. Police the police, guard the guard, chair the chair, chef the chef.
Welcome back to Combating Corruption, your weekly current affairs program that focuses on all things relating to corruption. Today, we're taking a very close look at local authorities and the rampant increase in corruption. Joining me from the Urban Council Association of Zimbabwe is its president, Mr. Abel Matsika, and from the Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission, Commissioner Mlobane, whose main focus is on compliance and systems reviews. And now let's get back to the discussion that we're having, Mr. Matsika. We're looking at issues of redundancy and training capacity that's required. Please go for it.
Yeah, I'm saying people get into employment through qualifications, proper qualifications. Then they are given some tasks where they are, perhaps if you look at the procurement issue, it's the way we do it in this country might be different from how it is done elsewhere. Perhaps different from the station somebody was working. Suppose he was working out of the country. So when they get employment, procurement department, they need to adapt. They need to learn what is expected of them. What are the prescriptions of the Procurement Act of Zimbabwe? All those things. So they have to learn. It's a learning process.
I'm glad that you go so far as to express as much as you have, Mr. Matsika, because Commissioner Mlobane, you can clearly tell that there's a rampant inability for us to have capacitated individuals who are running within the local authorities. That seems to be where the Urban Council Association of Zimbabwe is focusing the problem on. Your findings in relation to that?
In terms of procurement, the Public Procurement and Disposal of Public Assets Act is a very comprehensive act, and it compares favorably with other acts, similar acts in the region and on the continent. We've done a research on that. What we want to highlight is that as the Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission, we have actually proposed, we are proposing that all procuring entities, over 340 of them, that they need to have, in addition to using the Act, they need to develop procurement policies. In the procurement policy, it will then indicate what needs to be done in terms of the relationship between management and the board, or in other words, the council. So what the procurement policy will then highlight is where the procurement unit or PMU should report to, so that there is improved accountability. We're proposing that the procurement unit PMU reports, in terms of its reports, to the finance committee, so that the finance committee brings procurement issues, procurement matters to the council and to boards. The same thing. Also, that's what we've been promoting in 2022 in our prevention of corruption toolkit. One of the policies that we have proposed to the institutions that we have so far worked with, which are over 50 institutions so far that we have met with, we're saying have a procurement policy. In the procurement policy, detail how the information will come to the council. For example, just as an example, one of the issues in the Public Procurement and Disposal of Public Assets Act is the fact that there is an annual procurement plan which has to be submitted to PRAS by latest 31st January of the following year. So we're saying let that procurement plan be submitted to the committee and be deliberated by the council, so that they know exactly what needs to be purchased.
Right. Now, on that particular note, Commissioner, thank you so much. If the annual procurement plan is not brought forward, what then becomes the recourse to that local authority? Are they then still just allowed to go forward and procure goods without having ensured that the annual procurement plan is available?
PRAS, just speaking on behalf of PRAS, PRAS has reported that compliance with the Act in totality is around 63%. It's not 100%. So not every institution is compliant in terms of submitting their annual procurement plan to PRAS. So we have the issue of the fact that they might not have submitted their annual procurement plan to PRAS. And then the second issue is that the governing body itself might not have had sight of the procurement plan.
Right. Now, looking at some of the concerns that have been raised by Commissioner Mlobane and Mr. Matsika, it seems as though that for city councils or for local authorities rather to be able to ensure that adequate service delivery is administered, how then can they do so without even being able to access the resources available to them through procurement plan initiatives?
It's a tricky one, but we take on board the suggestion and proposal that is coming from ZAC, having noticed how lax the systems are in terms of procurement. We take on board.
Is this not where the challenge is, Mr. Matsika, that because the system to some degree is so lax that it is that which is taken advantage of to be able to embezzle funds, to misdirect funds? Because you can't have the necessary apparatus put together, but the citizen will still require services. Water still needs to get cleaned, roads still need to get fixed, but because you haven't put in a proper proposal, proper plan, something comes out and we see this is where the leakages are coming from. Is that not the case?
Yeah, it is, and we are looking into that and taking on board the proposals that are being given. But I've also taken note of the proposal that is being given, and I would perhaps propose that ZAC have a thorough look at the Urban Councils Act, so that whatever proposals that they have should dovetail into the Urban Councils Act, and we won't be found in 6s and 7s, because in some instances they come to arrest us for having flouted the Urban Councils Act. So I've heard say the procurement unit has to report to the finance committee, then to council. It's a good proposal, but if you go to the Urban Councils Act, it doesn't stipulate that.
The Auditor-General's findings. Continually, her findings have continued to show an inability of local authorities to manage funds appropriately. And it seems as though that local authorities have taken no heed to the Auditor-General's findings, implying that they know better. Yet the citizenry continues to complain of a lack of service delivery. Your sentiments?
Yes, just a quick one. I want to avoid this one. Just to let Councillor Matsika know that we are very much aware of the Urban Councils Act. I think we know it inside and out. So the thing is, there are so many legislations that you need to take note of. We have the Public Finance Management Act. You have the Public Procurement and Disposal of Public Assets Act. You also have a PECOC, which of course doesn't apply to them. But all this, and also there's the Criminal Codification Act, sections 170 to all the way to 174, which criminalize certain acts, and including bribery, including concealment of a transaction, where you have a personal interest, concealing your interest from a principal, etc. So those are some of the things that we then take into account. So over and above what the Auditor-General would have highlighted, Auditor-General looks at the integrity of the financial statements, whether they reflect a true and fair view or not, and then she will give in her opinion in terms of those findings, in terms of her findings. What we have observed from the Auditor-General's findings is that there is a gap in service delivery. She points out issues of service delivery, that they are being shortchanged, and it goes all back to planning, in terms of planning in the Procurement Act, in the procurement plan, where you don't plan to make sure you deliver services.
That's it. I will get back to that particular note shortly. Thank you so much, Commissioner Mlobane. We'll take a short break and we'll be right back with the final segment of Combating Corruption. Stay tuned.
Police the police, guard the guard, chair the chair, chef the chef. Police the police, guard the guard, chair the chair, chef the chef.
Welcome back to Combating Corruption, the final segment, of course, focusing on all things relating to corruption. Feel free to engage with us on our social media platforms at ZBC News Online. Currently joined in studio today by the Urban Council Association of Zimbabwe President, Mr. Abel Matsika, and from the Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission, Commissioner Mlobane. Now, urban councils in their instances have failed to administer their role in terms of the findings by the Auditor-General. Continual findings continue to show a lack of compliancy on the Auditor-General's findings. Basically, it seems as though they're not being taken seriously.
I wouldn't agree, since the Auditor-General started their work seriously in local authorities. There has been some improvements. If they visit the institution, for example, they make their findings, they call for an audit committee exit meeting where councillors are appraised on issues that have been raised. And we've noticed through our councils that there is generally, a reduction in number of issues being raised by the Auditor-General.
Mr. Matsika, someone could argue that there's a reduction in the number because the Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission keeps having to come to the local authorities when they're called. Someone could argue that that's the reason. It seems as though that it's still having to be enforced by an anti-corruption body. Why aren't local authorities taking the Auditor-General's findings seriously?
Yeah, they are.
Internally, that is.
Yes, they are. We are tightening the systems. We are making sure that adherence to the systems.
Let's look at it this way, Mr. Matsika, just to be able to also appreciate that I do understand you speak on behalf of urban councils.
Yes.
But I also want to be able to be clear that you don't also hold a mandate to operate on all their behalfs. However, in being able to follow your mandate within the organization, which is a lobby, right, be it government, to ensure that there is compliancy with all councils, despite where they are in the country. Why is that then not being done? And if that is being done, please explain to me how so.
Yeah, that's being done. It is being done. What local authorities are doing now, they've set amongst themselves like a club where local authorities visit each other, advise each other, check on the systems, compliance issues.
So let's look at what you advise each other about the Auditor-General's findings. What do you advise amongst yourselves about her findings? How amongst yourselves do you decide to address the issue of her findings?
We generally, these are systems, and systems are very, they are not peculiar to a local authority. We encourage each member to make sure that they adhere.
And the same systems that you highlighted earlier on are not efficient. The same systems that you highlighted are not efficient are the ones that you continue to discuss and figure out how best to be able to address.
Yeah, there's an improvement. Like I said, there's generally an improvement, and Zaki is complimenting.
Right.
Not that they are very much.
Where would you say an improvement is taking place, Mr. Matsika?
Yeah, we look at issues that perhaps were raised by the Auditor-General in the past year. Then you look at the current report, and you see that there's an improvement.
Maybe
that's how we measure.
Okay, let's maybe zero it down. Let's get to Karoi more specifically. What would you say in Karoi has been a systematic compliance assimilation that has been taken in line with what the Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission's position is, but more importantly, on the Auditor-General's findings?
Yeah, the Auditor-General, for Karoi in particular, raised quite a number of issues in the audits that were done previously. We looked at them. Most of them were pointing at the policies. Like she highlighted, there were some policies that were missing, some transport policies, some labor policies, quite a number of policies. Then we had to make sure that those are in place, and that's how we have improved the system. Yes.
All right. Let's get into the third area that you brought up, Commissioner Mlobane. You brought up procurement, concerns, Auditor-General's findings, and recruitment.
Yes.
Expand there a bit for us.
Yes. On recruitment, it's a whole basket of human resources policies. We have found that some of the recruitment policies are also not very clearly documented. In particular, the Constitution requires that when you recruit across the country. There should be no discrimination. But what we have found is that there is a tendency for people of a certain district only to be employed. In that way, it creates a cartel for corruption. So particularly one local authority was actually quizzed by the Public Accounts Committee, the Local Authorities Subcommittee, where they had recruited someone without necessarily advertising across the country. So that's one area that we found where they are wanting in terms of their recruitment policy. Because then also we found that acting and allowances policy within the HR policies. There's also a gap there, which we then commend that they improve on that, because there are some people who have been acting in certain positions, key positions, for a very long time, and as a result they can't be held accountable. And also succession plans, succession policies are also not in place, and as a result information is contained with one person, within one person, and so it's a problem when that person leaves. And so there have been vacancies in very senior positions for a very long time. So in recruitment, those are the issues that we have brought up, and we've said, can you also make sure that your human resources committee has included in their charter or terms of reference areas that will then reduce corruption in recruitment.
Right. Mr. Matsika, would you be of the opinion that corrupt activity contributes towards the sabotage of access to service delivery within any council?
Yeah, indeed.
The concerns that Commissioner Mlobane raises with the loopholes that come up around ensuring that there are inefficiencies by virtue of not filling in positions seems to speak to a manner in which contributes towards corrupt activity taking place. Since you agree, how are you addressing that particular issue?
Yeah, that's the essence of this engagement with ZAC. You know, councils have their policies, recruitment policies, and which are also peculiar to them. We don't have a standard recruitment policy in Zimbabwe where each and every local authority maybe does something that is similar to the other.
Have you posed one?
So if they have a recruitment policy that speaks to a specific area, then it becomes an issue. What is coming out from what the commissioner is saying, I mean, indicates that we need to revisit our recruitment policy holistically.
Right. Yeah. On that particular note, I would like to be able to at least get a final way forward. The biggest concern with local authorities are around service delivery. The citizenry's concerns is that their contribution towards local authority revenue speaks to a service delivery that they're meant to receive. There's been a loss of hope by a lot of people when it comes to being able to look at their local councils to be able to meet service delivery. What are your sentiments in that regard, but what sort of a surety can you give the general citizenry that this sort of recourse can be arrived?
Right. Local authorities are part of the government. And we know our government has a Vision 2030, where if we tolerate corruption, we'll never get to Vision 2030. So we are fighting corruption as a country, and the local authorities are taking the lead.
Thank you so much for your contribution. The Commissioner Mlobane, once again, thank you so much for joining us. But of course, if you just give us your final thoughts on with regards to the engagements of compliancy and systems reviews within the local authorities.
What we want to do is to strengthen corporate governance, and which will make sure that there's improved service delivery, and also that they have policies and structures that then allow them to combat corruption, and that the policies that they already have within them, they review them and incorporate areas that will prevent corruption. Specifically, that each local authority should have an anti-fraud and anti-corruption policy, which will then guide them as to how to respond against any breaches in terms of integrity. And of course, we encourage having an integrity strategy as well as integrity committees that will then ensure that everybody is practicing integrity as enshrined in the Constitution.
I'd like to thank my guests in studio joining us from the Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission. Commissioner Mlobane, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
And also from the Urban Council Association of Zimbabwe, Mr. Matsika, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
That's all that we had tonight. Pleasant viewing. Good night.
Police the police, guard the guard, chair the chair, chef the chef, save the